Welcome back to another episode of The Conscious Artist, a safe space for conversations around mental health awareness for musicians, artists, and all human beings. I am your host, Pallavi Mahidara. I'm a concert pianist and teacher, and I am absolutely thrilled that you are joining us today. My hope for this show is that it will give all of us a sense of solidarity and knowledge that we are not alone, and together, through these conversations, we can create more awareness and change for a healthier future. Today's guest is a very special one, an accomplished cellist and a wonderful person. She currently resides in Toronto, where she is a member of Sinfonia Toronto and the Ton Beau String Quartet. We met 20 years ago, and our friendship is literally the definition of two friends that never get to see each other, but always just pick up wherever we left off every time. Please join me in welcoming my very dear friend, Sarah Steeves, to The Conscious Artist. Sarah, I can't tell you how happy I am that you're here today.
I'm so happy to be here. It's really been 20 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, we met when we were one, right?
We did meet when we were one, yeah. I'm just laughing now. Yeah, it's been 20 years. Wow. I was thinking about Banff and thinking about how we met and just like that instant friendship.
Well, I am grateful for your friendship and so thankful to have you here today because today's topic about audience participation is a very interesting one. So at the beginning of this year, I went to a flamenco performance, which living in Spain is something I love getting to do. And I was struck by a few things. Aside from the beauty and the passion of the music, what I found so striking was the amount of joy that was being expressed on stage. The palmeros and the guitarist were smiling at each other for like most of the performance, and there was this tangible energy exchange and interaction between the artists on stage and the audience off stage. And it was really quite mesmerizing. And this sort of audience participation is common, as we know, in jazz, in Indian classical music, in the pop world, of course, and in many folk traditions. And to some extent, you know, even in opera, right?
Right.
The public will clap after a big aria, for example. But I remember as I was watching and listening and absorbing this incredible performance, amidst the dozens of times I heard "ole" in the middle of a song where people started cheering or clapping, it really made me think about the restrictiveness of classical music performances.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't enjoy when we're on stage. I mean, the music that we play makes us want to cry and smile and laugh and rip our hearts out all at the same time, right? And I know that the public feels many of those things too, but the amount of pressure that we feel as classical artists to maintain like a stone face or portray some sort of distant or unattainable image or play perfectly, you know, whatever that means, kind of makes me wonder if we then lose sight of the very fundamental reason of why we play this music. And I remember you and I having a conversation about this over Instagram about audience participation or, you know, the lack thereof in classical music. And so I would love for you to share your thoughts on this topic with our audience because I found your perspective very interesting.
I think that it really depends on the concert setting and how you are presenting the concert, because some of our concerts are very formal concerts. Like if you go to the symphony hall, the expectation seems to be that it's almost going to be like listening to a concert through noise canceling headphones, that there will be nothing going on other than the music and the audience. And that almost can dehumanize the audience. We joke about people crinkling candy wrappers. Well, maybe someone needs a cough drop so they don't cough. Like that's being human. And we speak about that like that's somehow so disruptive because everything is so quiet. And other concerts are less formal or set up in a way where there's less pressure for absolute silence. Music is meant to be part of the world and how we're communicating with each other, but forcing it into a situation where everything is almost sterilized, I think puts constraints on both the performers and the audience who are also participating in the concert experience, in the concert event.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is that I think that this kind of like audience etiquette, classical music audience etiquette that has come to be, has become so distorted that what it actually is doing is leading to passive listening. This was something that I noticed in this flamenco concert, that the audience was actively engaged, actively listening, actively participating.
And honestly responding spontaneously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yes, it's very different to respond spontaneously to, a jazz performance, a flamenco performance, a pop performance, folk performances. It is very different. We probably don't want people cheering or clapping in the middle of Schubert's last piano sonata or something, Like there are situations where we do need that silence because the silence speaks more than the music sometimes, right? We know that silence is powerful.
Yes.
But what I've noticed is that I think there is this concept of passive listening in classical music audiences. And what I mean by that is because people feel that they have to be completely silent, they actually stop listening properly. They stop listening actively to what's happening because classical music is so complex and so rich and so deep and so full of beauty and pain and joy and suffering and all emotions one could possibly feel. But I don't think that, especially people who are not versed in classical music, I don't feel like they allow themselves to access those emotions listening to classical music because they are not listening actively. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I love the phrasing that you were just using, active listening. If you're at a concert hall and you're more worried about your behavior, and if you're going to clap at the wrong time, or if you're going to disrupt other audience members, you can't focus on the music. You can't give the performance the energy that you want. Nobody wants to make a fool out of themselves, but hopefully when you're at a concert, the focus is the concert, the performance, and how you're reacting to that. There's a difference between silence because people are afraid to make a sound and silence because the air is buzzing with that energy of someone creating an artistic moment and the audience being in the palm of their hand.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That energy, that's exactly it. That intangible energy that exists in the hall, exists in the particles in the air between the audience and the performer.
Yes, and every once in a while, like you create that moment with your audience, and then someone breathes like a yeah, or that was awesome. And everyone can hear it because it's so quiet, but that person has said the thing everyone was feeling. And that's magic. And if people are afraid to respond honestly, if people stifle those moments, right now we're focusing on those kind of silent magic moments, but there's also the opposite. I mean, there's so many symphonies or string quartets that end with big, boisterous first movement, climactic endings, and then the audience greets them with silence. And so often that feels bizarre, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I never mind when audience members clap after a first movement.
Yeah, I don't think anybody minds, but like I've been at concerts where someone in the audience turns and reprimands somebody for clapping at the end of a first movement.
But it's generally not a musician that does that.
I don't think so. So maybe, I mean, part of this is audiences taking the music so seriously that they're ruining a moment.
Right. Overcompensation of
Yes.
audience etiquette, which is learned. It's like when people think that you have to wear a black tie gown to go to the ballet or the opera.
Yes.
We don't care.
No,
You can come in jeans. We don't care. We just want you to appreciate the music.
I would much rather you come in jeans than not come at all.
Yes.
Yeah. Let the audience around you respond however is honest for them.
But this also comes back to how we as artists can help engage our audiences. And
Yep.
I don't like to use the word educate them, but I don't know how else to say it. Like help them to learn more about, I mean, that is what education is, but help them to learn more about how we would like them to respond. Like, or how we would like them to engage.
I think that's part of what my brain was thinking at the beginning when we started this conversation. At my string quartet concerts, quite often at the beginning, we talk to our audience a little bit and encourage them to respond however they want. We try to establish a warm and friendly environment. We're interacting with the audience at intermission at the end of the concert. And hopefully that makes the audience's concert experience one where they're comfortable to connect with the music however that works for them. I've been really happy with how that's felt. an audience member comes up and starts asking questions about one of the pieces that we played, or expresses sometimes a little too honestly, that one didn't work for me, but that one was phenomenal. And that's so important to them to be able to give back to us how they felt about the music that we shared that night. And I've loved having that. And it's basically a very simple framing device. Please enjoy this. Please respond however you want. We love applause. We love feedback. Give it to us. We want to share this with you. And I think that's harder to do in larger venues.
Right.
Or, if you're going to the ballet or the opera house, or, places where people have a very strong idea of what to expect, but we can set a tone. That tone can be as inviting, as open, or as focused as we want it to be.
I love that. I think that's so inclusive. Well,
and that's a whole other part of this, is there are people that don't feel comfortable going to concerts because they don't know how to behave, or in some cases they're worried about their child or
doing it wrong.
In Toronto, there's a concert series called the Xenia Concerts that presents concerts specifically for neurodivergent and communities with disabilities, so that everyone is comfortable going to that concert. Whether that means that there's a space for kids to crawl around on the floor, whether that means a lot of accessible parking. There's all sorts of factors for those concerts that they've tailored and they change to create an inclusive concert environment.
That is so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And the musicians that founded it, and the Sinfonia String Quartet, and my friend Roy McLeod is currently running it. And it's an incredible vision, and it's an incredible way to share our music. And that inclusion and accessibility is, I think, something to be nurtured and shared as much as we can. Not everyone can sit still for an hour or an hour and a half, let alone a 3-hour opera. And that doesn't need to be the expectation.
And it's not fair for people who cannot sit still or cannot physically come, that they don't get to enjoy the beauty of the music that we want to share.
Absolutely.
Just because they're not able to physically come. Like this is such a beautiful project and initiative. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Happy to. I think it's an incredible organization. And you were just talking about people that can't physically go to a concert. I think that's one of the wonderful things that has come out of a very not wonderful pandemic. There's been an industry-wide comfort with live streaming concerts that's developed.
Yeah.
And I know that those concerts being live streamed in nursing homes and different facilities and schools around rural communities that don't have access, or, it's very expensive or whatever to drive 8 hours to a symphony concert. That accessibility is incredibly important.
But do you think people are actually taking advantage of this newfound possibility to hear music more accessibly? Do you think people are actually tuning into the live streams? Are we doing enough in the classical music world to encourage people to participate even beyond the concert hall?
I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest. I have one student who lives in northern British Columbia who loves listening to the Vancouver Symphony live streams. And so she is an example of someone that this is absolutely working for. To go back to the phrase from earlier, she is actively listening to those concerts that she's not able to attend in person, but would love to if she lived closer to Vancouver. I don't know if there's enough audience members like that to cover the cost of live streaming, because it is such an expensive thing to do well. But I know for her that it's been a wonderful thing. And I know that Sinfonia Toronto has had success having our live stream concerts in various retirement facilities, and having people be able to enjoy our concerts when that would be much more difficult in person. Then there's the conversation, most people would still prefer a live experience in person than a virtual concert.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuance to that. And as the world is opening again, I think we'll see a lot more shifts around that. But I hope that it does stay part of the conversation, because I do think it opens possibilities that we didn't take advantage of a few years ago.
Absolutely. And, look, what we do as artists if we can make a difference to even one person, it's worth it, right?
Yes.
Of course, we'd like to be able to bring this beauty and this art and this joy that we feel to others, because we know the impact that it can have on people. And now when you were speaking about this, about live streaming, it was making me think, for example, in New York at Lincoln Center, they project the Met. They do like a video projection, video and audio projection in Lincoln Center Plaza. Here in Madrid, they sometimes will project the live stream of an opera from the theater house in the square.
I've been to one of those in Covent Garden in London, and it was amazing. There were thousands of people in this square, and because it was London, it started to rain, and everyone just popped out their umbrellas and continued to sit and enjoy the opera. It was wonderful.
That's so nice.
And, you know, everyone had, like, there was picnic blankets and tea and snacks, and I'm sure there were people there that also enjoy opera in the opera house, but I'm also sure that there were people there that are not normal opera goers, but it being outside, it being more social, because you're sitting and chatting with your friends while you're enjoying it, that made things more possible.
Right.
Or made it seem more exciting, maybe.
Right. And these kind of outdoor musical experiences have been happening for a while. Like at the Ravinia Festival in Chicago, they've been doing that for years. I grew up going to listen to concerts. If I couldn't get a ticket to sit in the pavilion, I would sit on the lawn with my family on a picnic blanket. And at Wolf Trap in DC, and I'm sure there's so many around Europe that I don't even know about.
There's a wonderful one in Toronto it's actually called the Music Garden down on the waterfront.
Wow.
It's an incredible series. And yeah, you're in this beautiful garden that's inspired by Bach's First Cello Suite.
Wow.
And performing outdoors can be challenging, but there's summer venues and they're fun, and there's always people that walk by that are all of a sudden, oh, I'm just going to sit down and continue enjoying this. There's an openness to the community that's much different than a ticketed event. Maybe not at Ravinia, that was ticketed, but something when I'm imagining the Music Garden, someone's walking their dog and all of a sudden they're listening to a string quartet or whatever it is. I love the spontaneity of that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful and so inclusive. And my question is, what we are doing and what we can do as musicians to be more inclusive with our audience. So I love what you said earlier about your string quartet performances, how you guys speak to the audience, you introduce your program a bit. I've been doing that for years. I love speaking to my audience before the concert. I'm not giving a music history lecture, but I'm just saying a few sentences or whatever, some things that I like about the music and something I feel might be interesting for them. And that also breaks that invisible barrier down.
Yes. When we talk with the audience and we're able to share, here are some things I love about this music. I've been working on this music for months, if not years. And you're hearing it for the first time. Here are things that I think you might love about this too. Here are things that you can listen for. Nobody wants to listen to a lecture before a concert, but a little bit of enthusiasm and joy to share before the music starts, I think works so well.
Absolutely. I love that. And I do it as frequently as I can and with so much joy and desire and willingness to include the audience, because it is also kind of lonely on stage. And so when especially if you're, a soloist like me.
I was just thinking that. I was like, I'm never alone on stage. I've got an orchestra, I've got a quartet. But you're right. Like, we're not stopping to check in with each other mid-performance. How did you feel about that movement? You're focused. You are alone in that moment, except for you're not, because there's a whole audience there.
Right. And it can be a very collective experience if we also bring the audience with us.
Yep.
And some performers, like the greatest performers, don't need to say a word. They come on stage and from the first note, they carry the audience with them in their pockets. We know those kind of great master performers. But as a general rule, that's not always what happens. And so maybe trying to adapt and learn how to relate more with our audiences is good.
I would continue that some of the greatest performers that I've seen have completely created a moment and completely created magic without saying a word.
Yep.
I'm thinking of a couple quartets in particular where at another concert, they have spoken a little bit. And maybe this is just that I prefer that when they do speak, because they've always surprised me with something that they're really excited about or something that they want to share. I think there's space for both of those things, where there's here's just music, and then also here's an experience where it's more of a discussion. There's more of a collaboration between the audience and the performers.
Right. And this ties back to what you said in the beginning, which is it's circumstantial.
It is. Yeah.
It depends on the situation, it depends on the hall, it depends on the performers, the pieces that are being performed. I had a question for you. You were saying earlier that your quartet encourages the audience to respond however they feel.
Yeah.
And so I'm super curious to know, do people ever like clap, not only in between movements, but like during a movement or during a piece?
Not clapping, but there have been moments where, someone does something in the quartet the one I'm thinking of is there's a quartet by Laura Scroy that the first movement has this incredible first violin lick. And after we played that section, there was absolutely like an audible kind of like, whoa, that kind of rippled through the audience.
Wow.
And it wasn't disruptive. It felt like an honest reaction. That's what we're thinking after it was Jeremy performing that, after Jeremy did that incredible thing. And I'm glad that the audience felt moved to do that. I'm glad they felt that they were able to do that. And that felt really great. It is more like a jazz situation or the flamenco situation that started this whole conversation, where that was awesome. I'm going to let you know right now. I'm not even going to wait for the end of a movement or the end of a piece. Yeah. I'm just going to respond in the moment. And there's so many situations in the world where we communicate by applause. Right. Whether it's sporting events, whether it's concerts, whether it's political rallies, whether it's landing a plane. Strangely, that one doesn't make sense to me, but it's a thing. All of those applause settings seem to have different rules, and only a couple of them have those flashing lights that are like, applause now, please. I think that Western classical music is much more on the strict side of when that is appropriate. I was at a musical this summer called Anne Juliet, and there was a moment towards the end of the musical where I'm 90% sure the actors and performers on stage were trying to get everybody up out of their seats and dancing and clapping and singing along. And the audience was we were in the palm of their hand. It was an incredible performance. But we didn't stand up. We didn't clap. We weren't sure. We weren't confident enough that that was what they wanted us to do to actually do it. The Wednesday night audience didn't stand up, didn't start clapping and singing along. I'd be very curious to know, did the Thursday night audience? And that's where, as performers, we need to be very clear with our expectations. Do we want absolute silence? Do we want the audiences to react a little more authentically? Do we want people, if we're outside, do we want them to stop and join the concert mid-concert because they just happen to be walking by? Right. I think that's something that every time you're presenting a concert can be part of how you're thinking about what that concert's going to be as an experience.
Yes, I think you said it very eloquently. It's about the expectations that we also set, not only for ourselves, but for our audience members. And I mean, we can thank Mahler, right, for stopping audience participation, basically.
We can thank Mahler for so many things.
No, but like, for example, like during Mozart's time, like audiences were expected to express their appreciations spontaneously during the performances, and like single movements would be repeated if they received a lot of applause.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's so strange to me, that the idea of what a concert is and should be is this construct that happened in the early 20th century that somehow has stuck around quite a bit.
And has become warped and distorted with time.
It has, yeah.
Kind of like religion, but that's another conversation.
That is a whole other conversation we can get to. My brain was going to Santa Claus and engagement rings. these things that kind of came into a specific kind of existence in the early 20th century and have just stuck. Whether it was the Coca-Cola company or Mahler. Yeah, like operas, there used to be whole kitchens and food happening. And now we're sitting in a 3.5 hour evening, solely focused on what's happening on stage. And I love what's happening on stage. I don't want us to not focus on it, but I want audiences to feel welcome and for there to be lots of ways for people to engage with the art and the music that we're creating.
I really agree with you. And it's so interesting for me to know that you are doing this with your quartet because I've been thinking about this since I went to this flamenco concert. This was back in February. And I've been saying that, like, you know what? I think I want to do an experimental recital where
Yeah.
I tell the audience, like, I want you to react spontaneously, whether you want to cheer, you want to say something, you want to clap. Of course, like if there are specific pieces that I want silence, like if I'm playing Brahms' left-hand transcription of the Bach Chaconne, I don't want somebody clapping in the middle. But if I'm playing like Liszt Paganini etudes, sure, if you want to cheer after I nailed those octaves, go for it. Right?
Well, sometimes when we nail the octaves, like we're cheering for ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
We're
We're
like,
like, thank God. Thank God I didn't mess up.
exactly. You know this about me. When I was growing up, I also figure skated and still follow figure
Yes.
skating and love to go watch figure skating events. And whenever anyone does a big trick, the audience claps, whether it's a triple axel, whether it's the lift, whether it's a really great piece of footwork, the audience responds. And there's something so fun about that. The flip side of that is arenas can get rowdy. You hear skaters talk about not being able to hear their music that they're skating to at the end of a program because the audience is clapping so loud. So there's definitely drawbacks that we don't necessarily want classical music to go to, but that spontaneous appreciation of a moment, I've been on both sides of that. I've been the skater that got that response, and I've been the audience member wowed by something incredible on the ice and able to immediately express the happiness of that.
And figure skating is not for the faint of heart either. It's not like it doesn't require an enormous amount of concentration.
Absolutely, it does.
Thank you for reminding me about yourself because this is actually a very interesting parallel.
Well, I think, like I was saying earlier, there's so many places where we applaud and the rules are different everywhere. And in skating, it's not just when something awesome happens. Sometimes there's a skate that's not going well, and the audience starts to encourage the skater. They start to clap, they start to cheer, get back on your feet, keep going. And you see, sometimes the skate doesn't turn around. Sometimes it still doesn't go the way the skater wants to.
Because as we know, sometimes we get in our heads and can't really recover from what we feel is a bad performance.
Exactly. We've all been there. But sometimes that helps the skater get out of whatever mindset, whatever distraction, refocus, re-energize, and turn that skate around. And whether it's successful or not, I love the idea that the audience also wants to see a good skate.
Right.
They also want people to perform their best.
Right.
And so if a mistake happens, there's not a negative response. There's a response of, how can we help you do your best?
How can we support you? How can we encourage you?
Yes.
I mean, how beautiful is this? Like, I don't think anyone comes to the concert hall hoping to see someone fail on stage.
Well, and if you are coming to the concert hall for that, can you please not come to my concerts? I don't think that's what anybody wants.
Right. And I just love this idea that there's like a community encouragement of, hey, you've got this and we've got your back.
Yeah, there's something incredibly beautiful about it. I think that's one of the only places that I've experienced that. Now that I just said that, I'm remembering going to a soccer game, which has its own incredible traditions of songs and cheering and chants. And that's absolutely to encourage their team and discourage the other team. But it's audience participation in a way that builds that community. And that's something that musicians talk about all the time is our community. Can our concert behavior, how we talk about that, how we frame that, can that help us build our community rather than limit it?
I love that. I mean, sports, we know how much audience participation there is in sports. And I think figure skating is a beautiful segue between the arts, the fine arts, and athletic event as well. I mean, it's both. And
it's really a blend, which is part of why I love it. people create moments on ice as well. There are performances that have been completely silent through them because there's this moment being woven just like at a concert. And then there are other skates where it gets loud, it gets rowdy, it gets exciting because a whole other kind of moment is being created. Trust your audience. They'll respond to what you do. Give an audience room to react and enjoy and also express themselves in how they're participating in what's happening.
I love that. I mean, I don't know what the answer is or will be or how things will develop and continue, but I love that you as a musician, as an artist, are already doing your part and what you can to be more inclusive. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're performing these great works of art because we love them and we want to share them. So, you know, wouldn't most of us actually like to know in real time that the people that are listening to us are also enjoying?
Well, and this is why I don't think there is one answer, one way. It's Mahler. Maybe there are moments, there are definitely moments in Mahler where you do want silence after and during. But especially if the concert is outside, there's going to be community noises. There's going to be an ambulance that drives by. That's part of the community. That's part of the community that you are performing for. And that is part of the magic of that moment. There was a string quartet concert where dogs started barking immediately as we started this one exciting movement. And now I can't hear that moment without the dogs barking. And it reminds me of that concert. And that enhances my own sense of that music and the joy of that. I don't know if anyone remembers that moment but me, but it weaves the music into my life and my memory of my own life, which is part of what art is meant to do.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here with me today. This was such a lovely conversation. And I mean, I think we could talk about this topic for so long. But as I said before, I'm so thankful to know that there are other people that feel similarly as I do, that I think there's more that we can do, and it's going to be circumstantial. It's going to change in every situation. And how can we adapt as artists, and how can we include the audience as people?
This conversation is going to continue to evolve as the world changes, as we travel, as we're performing in different places for different communities. And as times continue to change, concerts, what a concert is and what a concert can be is going to continue to change. And thank you for having me to have this conversation about how we're both feeling about that in this moment. This conversation started on Instagram, but it will and can continue for a long time about the music and the art that we're sharing.
Thank you all so much for listening. I'm truly grateful for the support from each and every one of you. If you would like to submit any questions or topics for us to address on the show, you can send us a message on our Instagram page @ConsciousArtistPodcast. Help us to spread more awareness by sharing this episode with your friends, your colleagues, your teachers, and your students. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Sending you all so much love and strength to tackle this week, and we'll see you next Monday for another episode of The Conscious Artist.